So thank you, ladies, for joining me this evening. It's really lovely to have you with me, and I'm really grateful that you're spending the hour talking to me about cracking the glass ceiling. And I think it's a really interesting topic because it's one of those things that I think most women, if not all women, have issues with in terms of climbing the corporate ladder or the organizational ladder, so as to speak. So I really was looking forward to spending some time with you this evening talking about this issue. So thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you being with me tonight. So what I'm going to be doing is just a little bit of an introduction to me so that not all of you know who I am. My name is Karen Walsh. I coach women around the world. I run a business. I do international leadership development and team development. I am an experienced executive coach. I have lectured at university before in psychology, and I work on 3 different continents, being Africa, Fiji, and Australia. And interestingly, in January 2018, we actually start working in Papua New Guinea, which would be really, really interesting. So I have a deep connection with and passion for growing women at all levels. I've been working with women for over 25 years, and I like to believe that in some way, shape, or form, I'm able to change their lives. I like to help them lead the lives they were born to lead, free from fear and limiting beliefs that they believe they'll never get to where they want to go to. And I have a really firm belief that every single female on this world or on this planet can go to where she wants to go to if she has the desire, if she has the resources, and if she's really wanting to do what she wants to do in terms of moving forward with her life. I've worked with families, marriages, and individuals for over 20 years. It's actually longer. It's about 25 years. And really very passionate about keeping families together, keeping marriages together, and helping people, societies, and communities thrive. 2006, I worked with 604 marriages in 1 year. And that was really about trying to help, as I just explained, marriages stay together and thrive. I write columns, I write ebooks, I speak at about 20 conferences in Australia and abroad every year. So really I'm sort of doing lots of different work in the leadership space, the team development space, coaching of women, coaching of CEOs, and of course working with families and communities, and absolutely love what I do. I wrote The Empowering Woman to Thrive. Initially, it comes out of my work with women, but really initially came out of the domestic violence space. I have a long history in working with people in domestic violence, and I also have a long history in teaching issues around domestic violence to social workers and counselors who want to actually go into that field. And I decided many years ago that I really wanted to put a program together where I could help women really learn to thrive, because so many women in domestic violence or relationships that are toxic or unhealthy often stay for a whole range of different reasons. So I'm helping women at all levels and ages thrive. That's what I love. And therefore, based on this, the Empowering Women to Thrive program is about a conference each year. We run women's retreats. We have a 12-stage Empowered Woman program, which is both face-to-face and in February, it goes online, which I'm really happy about because a lot of women who I coach and who follow me are overseas, so in Fiji, Denmark, South Africa, the States, the UK. So always good to have my sisterhood, as I say, being able to access what we do and what we teach. We run 2-day programs specifically for women, resilience, managing stress, emotional intelligence for women, etc. I do a monthly meetup, which is one of these things here. We do individual and group coaching. And of course, the monthly webinars are all about women's issues, and they're different issues. Sometimes it's about resilience. Other times it's about learning how to have fantastic relationships. Other times it's about work-related issues, just like this evening. So get involved. What is the glass ceiling? I'm often asked this question by people who really don't understand what it is. And I don't have to bore you or to give you a lot of information around the glass ceiling, because I'm sure most of you already know what that is. But in essence, the glass ceiling is the unseen, unbreakable barrier that minorities and women suffer, from rising to the rungs of the corporate ladder, regardless of their qualifications or achievements. So very often what we know from the research, and I'm going to get into some of the statistics just now, is that women in many, many areas of their professional and personal lives are very much disadvantaged, if you like, around a whole range of different things. So leadership, politics. I mean, if you consider that, as early as the 19th century, women weren't allowed to vote. the 20th century, women weren't allowed to vote. So I think that there's historically been very much a minority of process and attitude against women. And of course, that's very, very evident in the workplace and in leadership and in politics. So the glass ceiling is essentially a barrier that women can get so high in organizations, in their careers, in their communities, in their societies, and then they can't go any further. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. And the evidence of the glass ceiling is just staggering. So when we talk, for example, in leadership, we're talking about that men hold the majority of board positions across all countries in the world. In order to make this particular webinar, you know, insightful and I suppose worthwhile, I really thought about what is it that I want to teach you. And I think to be able to show you how to distinguish women from men, it's important we look at, so where do both genders sit in the world today? So men hold the majority of board positions. We know that women in Australia account for essentially one in 5 board members. So 19% of women sit in board. And where, for example, in places like Iceland appears to be more equal representation, 44 versus 56. More men hold managerial positions than women across Australia. But if I had to go across all countries, it would be fairly similar, I would bet. Interestingly, I work in Fiji a lot, probably 5 or 6 times a year. And what's interesting for me working in Fiji is that I think that the representation between male and female seems to be more equal. However, overall, it is still a patriarchal situation whereby more men are in top jobs than women are. Men hold the majority of parliamentary seats in all countries around the world. And also, you know, at the end of the day, people might say, well, does it really matter? And, you know, well, at least, you know, something's being done in some countries around some women becoming more prominent in their field. Well, first and foremost, I don't think enough. That's the first thing. But I think the other thing that's really important to conceptualize here is that if women are not in leadership positions or are not equally represented, what you get is a gender skew in leadership, which means that then you often have male-dominated perspectives and male-dominated opinions. And ultimately, because you don't then get the balance, and women tend to be more collaborative and nurturing, you get a particular leadership style that one might argue is more adversarial as opposed to more collaborative, which is what women would do. And I think if you look at the world today, which is a really interesting concept, when you've got the President of the United States, you've got the Prime Minister or the leader of North Korea, for example, Kim Jong-un, both males, both dominant, both not particularly collaborative, I think quite marginalizing actually. And ultimately what you've got is you've got a real skew towards aggressive dominant male behavior that ultimately can threaten world peace. So when we talk about the glass ceiling in leadership, I'm not just talking about women who aren't able to progress their careers in work or in organizations. I think politically it has immense impact on the world moving forward, which is why when I do speak at conferences, I talk a great deal about this issue, that I actually think that for the world to get out of where it is today, we need exemplary leadership, and I really think more women need to be in international leadership positions. But if we look at work, for example, what are the stats? Well, historically female-dominated industries such as childcare and jobs have attracted lower, you know, sort of wages, etc., than male-dominated industries such as mining and mining jobs. So ultimately what that means is that women tend to be drawn towards a more nurturing kind of work, which is lower paid, whilst men tend to be drawn towards the more male-dominated mining, engineering kind of work, which is better paid. But one must argue, ladies, one must argue, what difference does it make? Is childcare not as essentially important as mining? One might argue it's even more important because you're raising children as opposed to, getting minerals out of the ground. I'm not in any way minimizing that particular profession, but I'm just saying it seems to be that we just place more importance on one than on the other. Women are more likely than men to work part-time or flexibly, as they still undertake most of the unpaid work, and that's because, you think young females coming out of school, they've done their HFC, they might even do their university degree, they're in the workforce for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and then biologically they are taken out to have children. And in the space of the 4 or 5 years that they leave, unfortunately, men take over, and then when the woman finally does come back into the workforce, she's essentially usurped. There's not always a lot of space for her to come back. And often it's those females who then will experience the glass ceiling. There's a gender pay gap favoring men in every country around the world of the 22 studied. Now, I don't have to make comment about that. I think that that's significant in itself. But one has to ask, why is there a gender pay gap favoring one gender over another? Surely, if you have the skills, if you have the capacity, if you have the ability, why would you not be equally paid? The fact is, ladies, that we are not. Women earn far less in Australia. We, women, earn 17.3% less than men in our country for the same job as at November 2017. Now, naturally, I hope that would change, but it's been fairly stable between 16.9 and 17.3 for the last 3 or 4 years in this country. And therefore, the chance of it changing significantly over the next few years is very low. The world over, however, women struggle to overcome gender biases that burden them in both their personal and their professional lives. So I think overall, as a gender, as women in the world, and I think as a world overall, we seem to struggle with this. And as I said earlier, it's affecting us in a range of different ways, not just pay. When people refer to a glass ceiling and women in the workforce, it means they have gone as high as they can in a company because they are female. Now, there would be many, many male CEOs or male directors or even male business owners who would absolutely disagree with this. And of course, ladies, this is not in every organization. Absolutely not. In fact, many organizations today are doing many different productive and fruitful things to change the glass ceiling phenomenon. However, the reality remains that the majority of the organizations in Australia, similarly to those overseas, have not yet addressed the glass ceiling or the gender pay gap issue. And ultimately, they might argue it's not because they're female. Well, if it's not because female, then what is it? Why is it then that females are earning so much less for the same job? So we have to be realistic in accepting we have a gender payment issue. If you experience a glass ceiling, it means that even though you can clearly see the next level of promotion ahead of you, and despite your best efforts, an invisible barrier seems to stop you from proceeding up the line. And I think that's the point. So men start getting promoted above you, men start getting, taken into positions that you might be earmarked for, or you might have earmarked yourself for, but unfortunately you're not able to take those up because somehow there's some barrier that prevents you from actually getting that role, which I think is significant in terms of leadership moving forward, as we've explained earlier, people on boards and the capacity and the commitment and also the ability that women can bring to so many different things in leadership, organizations, etc., etc. So I'm often asked, well, Karen, what are the answers to the glass ceiling problem? What do we do? And I think that there's two areas we should look at it. Number one is organizational answers, and the second one is individual female answers. So the organizational answers to the glass ceiling are, for example, to change a workplace culture to ensure gender equality. What we know from the research is that to change a culture in an organization takes between 3 to 5 years. So if you think about 3 to 5 years, it would mean then that ultimately you would have to still have a strategy and plans and action plans that move an organizational culture to one of achievement and support. And that obviously takes time, and there's got to be commitment and dedication to that. Ensure roles are gender neutral. In other words, you get paid X if you do a Y job regardless of your gender. So if you've got the skills and the competencies and the capabilities, you're going to get paid X amount for this job because you've got what it takes to perform the role. Establish policies to allow women to have flexible schedules And for some organizations, I know they have pumping rooms for breastfeeding mums. Now, at the end of the day, it is women who carry the burden of having children, or the gift. And at the end of the day, too, we don't have the flexibility to say, well, we'll have the children when we really want to, and we'll just keep doing our roles. The fact is that when we do fall pregnant, we conceive, we have a finite amount of time in which to leave the workforce temporarily or permanently at that stage. And I think there are many, many things that organizations can actually do to start ensuring that they are much more female friendly around birthing, having children, and being able to allow their female talent to be better accommodated. Often it's women in organizations who ensure that other women in that organization are able to care for their families without sacrificing their careers. It's not really men that organize, barring, of course, your people like your Richard Bransons, who really sees the value of females in his organization, and so goes over and beyond to help women survive and thrive in Virgin. Men have an important role to foster a respectful culture for women. I'd like to see more of that in Australia. I am sometimes cynical around tokenism in organizations. You know, the ticker box exercise where people say, well, we've actually got these leadership programs for women and we're growing them and developing them. I suspect that it's too soon, really. The jury's out for me. Is it a ticker box exercise, or is there a real change happening around developing women so that they can surpass the glass ceiling and really start to thrive in their careers? Men need to make decisions that will benefit women at all levels. And I say men, but I mean women as well. But often men are in those positions, as we've just described, of power and influence, CEO, managing director, etc. And so those are the people who really need to make the decisions and the policies and the processes that actually enhance females in their organization and ultimately move them beyond what's seen to be the glass ceiling. And I think also the other thing is, absolutely, as a woman, as a gender, we need to start speaking up. Speak up as a woman. Don't take things lying down and, you know, have the attitude of, oh, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. It does matter. And I think the important thing is that if you think it doesn't matter for you, then that's your personal concept. But here's another thing I'd love you to think about. It will matter for your daughter one day when she's in an organization and wanting to get to the top. So if you're not that fazed about it now, well, at least put up the fight for her, because I'm sure one day your daughter could have the ability to run any organization she wants to. So those are the organizational answers to glass ceiling issue. And there's many more, but I think those are the key roles or key issues I think that need to be assessed in the meantime. And then we talk about, well, what are the 10 strategies to have a fantastic career for yourself? Well, it's really interesting because I'm often asked this question, well, what are those strategies to create a fantastic career that will actually enable you to transcend the glass ceiling? And when I sat back and reflected on this question, and also obviously I do my research before I do talks, or whether, you know, if I speak at conferences or indeed if I do webinars, I like to know what I'm talking about. So I think if we go back to look at some of these things, the first thing would be, if you are a female in an organization and you see that not a lot of women actually get to the top of your organization, one of the things I think is really important is to identify the key competencies in your organization. In other words, what are the skills in the upper levels? So in your senior directors, what skills or competencies do they need? In your CEO, what skills or competencies? So, you know, you could go to your HR and say, could you explain to me what are the leadership behavioral competencies in this organization? Hopefully they do have them, but not every organization does. And I think then sort of pitch yourself against those competencies. What do you have? What don't you have? And what I'm trying to teach you is that even though you might experience a glass ceiling, you're better off being well developed in terms of skills and competencies to hopefully transcend beyond the glass ceiling if you have those skills and competencies, and it will give you greater chance to do so than if you don't have those skills and competencies. So be curious, be interested, find out what they are, and upskill yourself. Learn what competencies your company is looking for and see what you have. And I think that's an important point. What do you have? What don't you have? And then what are you going to do to fill those gaps that you may have in your skills and your competencies, to at least give yourself the best possible opportunity you can to get to the top of your organization. I think this is another really important point. You know, so many women with whom I work say, you know, there's a company I always wanted to work for, and I just don't like how it feels in the company, Karen. I don't like the values of the organization. And I think that's a really important point, ladies, is to find out what the values of the company are and do they fit yours. So you might say, well, what's an example? Okay, so we're working with a very large community-based organization at the moment, and they've had the most wonderfully nurturing and people-orientated CEO who was really popular and really, I think, a very good leader. For a long story cut short, this person left and went on to greener pastures. And so what they now have is another person who's come into the organization and who is very different in the way that they lead. So I think a lot more cutthroat. I think a lot more focused on getting the tasks done, focused on, I suppose, how would I say this nicely, cleaning out the organization. And also I think the people are not then as important as they were to the former CEO. And so what you've now got is that you've got people leaving the organization in droves. So I think the important thing is that it's really, really critical to think about, do I want to get to the top of this organization, or could there be other organizations or another organization out there that's better fitted to my particular values of, it could be anything, respect, integrity, you know, equality, fairness, whatever. Get educated about leadership. I say this time and time again, and that's probably why I do so much training in leadership around the world. Because I think if you're wanting to have a really great chance at being a fantastic leader, and you know, it sounds so crazy, it's not that hard, but you've got to get educated about how to lead, what the theory of leadership is, what's involved in leadership, and ultimately how to get to the top of your particular area and become the leader that you want to be, if that's what you want to do. And in order to break through the glass ceiling, it's important that you have these things that I'm teaching you about. The other thing I think is critical is to learn to communicate well in any situation. So, for example, if you have to present to the board, you do it well. If you're speaking to, you know, a cast of thousands, 2,000 people, you do it well. So whether you're speaking to 2 or 200 or 200,000, you're organized in your thinking, you're calm in your delivery, you speak well, no stuttering, you're confident in what you're saying, you really are able to hold your own. It's amazing how many women I've actually seen in organizations who've got it all. They've got the ability, they've got the intelligence, they know what they're doing, but they fall short of the ability to communicate it well. And I think that's a really important point. Learn to communicate well and hold your own in any situation. Set goals to become competent in roles and skills your leadership needs. I mentioned that just now. I think the other thing that's really important is to be a little bit more self-promoting. And I know most women go, oh my gosh, do I have to do this? But when I say self-promoting, it's about telling decision makers that you're interested in going up the line. I really would love your job one day in 10 years, or, you know, I'd love to do marketing. I'm so interested in marketing and the, you know, marketing cycle and creativity, etc. So I think the more you tell people or decision makers in your organization what you're wanting to do, the more out there you are in terms of what people know what you want to do. So often when something might come up, you might have the CEO saying, oh, you know, well, give Sammy that job, because Sam said to me one night at a network dinner we were having a couple of months ago, she was interested. So I think it's about being a little bit self-promoting and letting people know what it is that your plans are. Other thing I think is important is to work with your manager to help you develop the competencies and skills you need. And obviously the difficulty you might have if your manager is not supportive of that, that's really difficult. But then I'd probably either get a mentor in the organization or I would approach HR. But generally, if you have a manager who's very supportive, it's very, very beneficial to you, because then they will give you the opportunity to develop those skills, maybe put you on a cross, you know, management program, or be able to put you in another area like a job swap for a while. And it's really great if you have somebody who's really on your side to build those capacities and those competencies that you need. Number 9 is network like crazy. I don't think we always do this very well. I think men tend to do it better, but I think we need to be very much more focused on reaching out to groups, going on LinkedIn, being part of cross-functional teams, being visible, getting to know people who can help you, be your guide, be your mentor, but also be available to see an opportunity that you might not see both inside and outside the organization that would aid and abet you to get to where you want to go and move straight through that glass ceiling. Number 10 is find a mentor to help you get to where you want to go. And again, mentors can be inside organizations or outside. I've had both, and both were fantastic at that particular time in my life. And of course, I can't help myself. When I say 10, you will always know, ladies, there's another one. And the last one is never, ever, ever give up. So if you don't feel that you're getting anywhere, well, then try again. Or you might have to just acknowledge that this is not the organization for me. Or, which is why 75% of small businesses in Australia are owned and run successfully by, yep, guess who? Women. So, worst comes to worst, if you can't crack the glass ceiling and you really think about, well, maybe you would be better off just doing your own thing, because the chances of you making it and being successful are pretty high. So I'll come back to my Empowering Women to Thrive program. I'm absolutely passionate about this, helping women become, happier and more competent and more able to live more empowered lives. As I said, it's a 12-stage program. We do training programs for women, 1 and 2 days. We do a 9-stage blended learning online program coming online in February for the women who follow me and who I coach overseas. Monthly women's webinars like these. We do annual women's retreats. We do a conference. And if you follow me on LinkedIn or if you follow me on our website, then I'm often blogging and readings and articles and posts, etc. I speak at lots of conferences, as I said, and often I'll put those conference experiences onto the website, and I do eons and eons of coaching, executive coaching, or women down the line. Last year, I coached the 2016 Australian CEO of the Year, and guess what, ladies? Yes, she was a female, remarkable, remarkable female, who's just absolutely wonderful, and she's making such a huge impact on the aged care industry. It's a true pleasure to work with her. The Empowering Women to Thrive program, I think, takes women really at any level, both in their personal lives and their professional lives. I coach people both, or women both, personally and professionally, from this to this, and it's really about, helping women become very much more engaged and very much more involved in their lives, and to live more happily, and to be able to, have the future and the confidence that you want to have. Some of the programs, Emotionally Intelligent Women, the Communicating with Confidence Women, Stress-Free, Resilient Women, and of course lots and lots of women in leadership in business. So moving forward, if we can help, we would love to. What we do offer is a free strategic review, whereby you are able to spend an hour with me at no charge to you, and we talk about different issues that you may have, both personally and professionally, and I'm here to guide you and help you if I can. And I'm really, really happy to help you. I'm working with so many women all over the world at this stage. Really happy to help you as well. Go to the website, karenwalsh.com.au, have a little peek around, see what we offer, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you this evening. What will happen is I will get my marketing PA, Mariana, her name is MJ, and she will send you an invitation to a free sort of review, chat with me, whatever it is that you want to say or do, or coaching, and it'll come through as a time trade, and we would love for you to hook up with us and for you to just book yourself in for an hour. That's free. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening. Don't give up, ladies. You get out there and you have the most amazing, successful and wonderful careers and the most awesome lives, because you deserve it, you're worth it, and nothing should stop you. So drop me a line, go to the website, come through the website if you like, or you can contact me directly on info@karenwalsh.com.au. Awesome speaking to you, ladies, and have a most fantastic evening. If there's any questions, now's the time to ask me. Otherwise, I will hopefully speak to you on a personal or professional appointment time that suits you. No? Okay, well, have a fantastic evening, ladies. God bless. It's been wonderful speaking to you this evening. Take care. Bye.